it was a requirement at the time that all firefighters had a phone so that they could be called back from duty if they needed to be.
Or at least have a phone accessible to them, right?
So one of the interesting stories, we actually were able to find somebody who had witnessed the fire. Alice La Liberté had her family rented the second floor of their home to a firefighter by the name of Alan Minahan. And so he didn't actually have the phone. The Liberté family had the phone. So they answered the call. The phone rang. She answered it. And she had to go wake him up and say, you need to report to the Strand. Well, Alice herself worked for the phone company. And so when they called her, they're like, oh, by the way, you also need to come in. So Alice's brother, Joe, drove both her and Alan to the fire scene, and she went to work and then spent the next many hours fielding phone calls about the fire from different people.
Chief, you may be able to elaborate a little more on this. Was all calling telephone operators part of the dispatching process? Obviously the telegraph system was in place to alert the fire department about initial response and everything, but how did the phone company tie into the emergency response back then?
Well, in those days it was a 2-platoon system, so you're either working or you're off duty. And you didn't have much time off in those days. So when they had a fire of any size, such as a second alarm, the second alarm would bring another engine company and another ladder company from other stations in the city to the fire. And then the dispatcher at the fire alarm office would start making phone calls to firefighters in the various stations. As firefighters came into the station to get their gear, usually the first firefighter into the station would get the list of members of that station with their phone numbers, and on the phone in the station would then start calling those members from that station. So initially, fire alarm had to make calls to get firefighters in, and then as firefighters get into the station, they would start calling people back. So those people that were off duty were called back to work, and they were expected to return to duty, and there was no extra pay for it or anything like that. It was all just part of your responsibility.